Once again, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Research Integrity and Compliance Services webinar for spring 2025. We are thrilled to have you all here today and appreciate you taking the time to join us. Today's session, Understanding Conflict of Interest, a comprehensive overview in research, provides an overview of what the COI office does. It covers policies, the need for disclosing, the how and the what to disclose, and the process of creating management plans. Proposals and interest inventory will also be covered for any federal funded projects. It will also review some case studies, and there'll be a demonstration of how to disclose an eCOI in ARC. We are excited to have Phil Olchese presenting for us today. Phil brings a wealth of knowledge and experience, and we are confident you'll find this session both informative and engaging. As we move through the presentation, we kindly ask that you hold your questions until the end. We'll have a dedicated Q&A session, and you can submit your questions through the Q&A icon where Phil and his team will address them. Once again, thank you for being here, and we hope you enjoyed today's session. Let's get started. Phil, are you ready?
Yes, thank you for the introduction, Farah. I will share my screen. What's going on? Sorry, computer just froze up. All right, I am sharing my screen and I will start my presentation here. Happy Tuesday. Thank you all for joining today's session. And my name is Phil Olchese. I'm the COI Program Manager. And I will cover understanding conflicts of interest, a comprehensive overview today. So this is the overview, define conflicts of interest in research, responsibilities of the COI program, overview of COI policies, management of COIs. We'll do some case studies, and then I will take you into ARC to do a live demo on how to disclose. So defining the terms, a conflict of interest. Any situation in which one's financial or personal consideration either do or have the potential to compromise or bias one's professional judgment or objectivity. Investigator is anyone who is responsible for the design, conduct, or reporting for USF research project. What is a USF research project? Systematic investigation, including research development, testing, evaluation, designed to develop or contribute to generalized knowledge, whether or not it is made available to the general public, involving a USF employee, student, or other person where USF is responsible for the oversight or administration of this activity. What is a USF employee? Any individual in one of the following employee position types is coded as in GEMS. So basically anybody who works for USF and who is getting paid by USF. We have access to GEMS, so we oftentimes will look at previous payroll to ensure that the employee or investigator is still active at USF. An individual CUI. So most of the time we're dealing with remuneration. So that's oftentimes disclosed in consulting or advisory relationships. We also get a lot of intellectual property, mostly patents, but these may also be copyrights or trademarks. And positions on boards related to the research is also an individual CUI that needs to be disclosed. And one that I didn't list on here, but we see often is the employment of a related person or nepotism. So if any of your family member or anybody related to you is involved in the research project, that also constitutes as an individual CUI needs to be disclosed. An institutional CUI. So we're talking royalties, talking about equity interests that USF might have, or USF receiving a gift from an entity related to the research. This is typically defined as anything greater than $1 million. So significant financial interest, we also just call them SFIs. Yeah, so they're listed here. I just covered them. It's okay to have conflicts of interest. We actually want our faculty members to have a conflict because conflicts might result into innovations of new technology or drugs. It may lead to new intellectual property. Conflicts may also arise from interactions with industry, and they may lead to improved therapies. So conflicts aren't, a bad thing or frowned upon. They often help out in various ways I just mentioned. The key here is just to identify them and to manage them, to mitigate them. So submitting a project-specific disclosure. So yeah, any investigator, any USF investigator who has a SFI and that is related to a USF project, no matter the funding source, has to submit a project-specific disclosure. We also call them ECOIs. And they need to do this as soon as they learn that this project will be funded before engaging in this research activity. There's also a lot of outreach that occurs before this occurs. A lot of times a researcher will reach out to us saying, hey, do I have a SFI? Does this constitute as a COI? And that's great. We'd rather do that and communicate than having the PI or the investigator disclose, go through all that workload, and then not ultimately having a SFI. Responsibilities of the CUI program. To ensure that the integrity of research is maintained during all phases of research. So we're talking the design, conduct, and reporting. We also want to preserve the public's trust in the university while promoting entrepreneurship among researchers. Once again, conflicts of interest are not illegal or unethical as long as they're disclosed and managed. And we provide guidance, support the university's community regarding CUI policies, processes, and procedures. The scope of the CUI program. So our CUI committee currently consists of 15 members. They're composed of different backgrounds and composition. We have one chair and one CUI co-chair. We meet every fourth Tuesday of the month. Matter of fact, we have a meeting today at 3 o'clock. And during those meetings, I present all management plans that require committee review. Federal regulations and policies. So the two big USF policies are Policy 309 and 317, they cover individual and institutional conflicts of interest in research. We also follow PHS guidelines and regulations, specifically 42 CFR Part 50, Subpart F, and 45 CFR Part 94, which is objectivity in research. And any NSF proposals and awards, we follow the guidelines from the National Science Foundation. This is also known as the PAPPG, the Proposal and Award Policies and Procedural Guide. So ultimately, all these policies will differ by each institution, but the general framework can be expected to be the same across universities. So the key elements of these policies are the individual financial conflicts of interest, the disclosing requirements for actual financial interest, the when to disclose, right, prior to proposal submission, the specific thresholds for what constitutes a significant financial interest, reporting obligations to the sponsor, which that may vary by the sponsor, but that is ultimately a federal regulation. Sub-recipient compliance, training requirements, PHS, public accessibility, retrospective review for non-compliance. USF CUI Policy 309, individual. So these are based on the individual's CUIs and SFIs. And an SFI as an individual is defined as the remuneration they receive, anything that's greater than $5,000. We're also talking anything that's greater than $5,000 in equity in a publicly traded company. Speaking of equity, any equity in a privately held company also needs to be disclosed. And of course, intellectual property and royalties. Once again, these are patents. And then any positions as director, an officer, or a partner in a related entity needs to be disclosed. And for disclosure for the individual CUIs, so for non-federally funded projects, prior to the initiation of the project, they need to disclose within 30 days of discovering or acquiring a new interest and annually during the project. Federally funded project, before the funding proposal is submitted, needs to be updated at the time of notice of award within 30 days of discovering or acquiring a new interest and annually during the project. And USF CUI Policy 317, institutional. So our institutional CUI Policy 317 applies to all types of research. So this may be human subjects, basic science, animals. And these institutional CRIs may arise in two ways. The interest of covered officials, so stock or ownership interest in an entity related to the research, remuneration from an entity related to the research, or once again, intellectual property. And the financial interests of the university are royalties of $100,000 or more, any equity in non-publicly traded companies sponsoring HSR, or as mentioned earlier, the major gift from an entity related to the research, generally greater than $1 million. Management of COIs. So in HSR, in human subject research, there's a rebuttal presumption that interested investigators or institutions should not conduct HSR. This presumption can be overcome if the COI committee determines the circumstances are compelling. So therefore, we have inherent controls. The investigators may be blinded, non-interested co-investigators conducting the research and or data analysis external or non-interest lab involvement, objective endpoints, early stage pilot research requires additional studies prior to commercialization. There may also be more requirements and controls. So we may require them to disclose in presentations or publications, oftentimes in journals that they might promote or disclose their research in. We require them to mention this. Of course, we have the informed consent document if we're dealing with human subjects research. We have informed consent language that needs to be included in this document, informing the participants of a potential COI. If we're dealing with students on studies, there's a safe harbor person that is elected. This person is somebody that these students can go to with any concerns or questions about the research. The safe harbor person is somebody who is not directly affiliated to the PI. Notifications to research personnel on this study. We might limit roles for interested investigators. Oftentimes, when there's a SFI that's being disclosed, the PI can't obtain consent. Of course, they can't recruit. That would definitely be considered a COI if they were to be able to obtain consent or recruit patients or participants into their study. There may also be an external IRB review. There may also be monitoring of research by an independent reviewer. And we may also require reduction of elimination of SFIs or severance of relationships. So the first case study, Dr. Jones would like to be the PI for a multi-center clinical trial sponsored by XYZ Pharmaceuticals. He plans to enroll 15 to 20 patients at USF out of the 1,500 that will be enrolled nationwide. Over the course of the past 12 months, XYZ Pharma has given Dr. Jones $20,000 in honoraria for speaking about his products. Dr. Jones expects to receive the same amount over the next 12 months. So yeah, there's a clear SFI that is being disclosed here. We're seeing that Dr. Jones is receiving remuneration of $20,000. Our threshold is anything greater than $5,000. And this is being received from the company that he is a study PI on. So he will need to disclose this. USF will implement a management plan and we will mitigate the COI. Second case study, BikeSafe is a small, non-publicly traded company seeking to develop a new product line that includes additional embedded technologies. Dr. Linter developed a bicycle technology to help bicyclists be warned of potential dangers. With assistance of the USF's TTO office, Dr. Linter has obtained a patent on this technology. BikeSafe proposes to license the technology and also to sponsor a study testing that technology at the university with Dr. Linter, the inventor, as an investigator on the project. USF accepts an equity interest in the company as part of the licensing agreement. So we're seeing SFI here. We're talking about a patent that's related to the studies. The fact that USF accepts this equity interest in the company as part of the licensing agreement. This patent will need to be disclosed to the CY office, and we will mitigate and implement a management plan for Dr. Linter. And the last case study, Dr. Leva develops a novel material to be used in prescription eyeglasses and owns 5% of the non-publicly traded company that is commercializing the product. The patent is assigned to USF, and Dr. Leva's company licensed the technology from USF and has not yet made a royalty or milestone payments to USF. Dr. Leva is now applying for an NIH grant that utilizes his patented technology in a non-human subject research study. So the SFI here is the ownership of 5% in the non-publicly traded company. This ownership interest is an entity related to the research. And we're talking royalties, payments to USF as well. We're also getting involved in an NIH grant. So yeah, this SFI will need to be disclosed to the COI office, and we will implement a management plan and mitigate this. Okay, so now to the fun part. I will take you into ARC. So a lot of researchers and PIs especially who are not familiar with ARC are very overwhelmed by this platform. And I totally get it. Um, it's a lot of buttons, there's a lot of functionality. The main buttons that I always want to stress and make people aware of is this left column here. So this is usually our tab that informs us of what role we're in or what state we're looking at. The fact that I have a lot of oversight over the system and different roles, most investigators and PIs will not have all these roles. So disregard that for now. But this is a very important function to once again see what state disclosure is in. So let's say we are a researcher, we're identified having a significant financial interest, and we want to disclose this. We need to disclose this. So we log on to ARC. We will identify a conflicts of interest, new CI disclosure button right here. If we're dealing with animals, we would submit this IACUC study here, but for the sake of this demo, we're just going to do a new CUI disclosure that is dealing with human subjects research. So all these buttons are pretty straightforward. Some of them may open further buttons and further prompts. So for the sake of this scenario, we will kind of generate our own test study. We will say that this is a non-funded PHS project. We will say it is not federally funded. The short title is usually a title that is used by the study staff or the team to identify the study, whereas the title of the research always needs to be the proposal title. There's a lot of times confusion when this title is entered incorrectly. If it doesn't match the proposal, a lot of things can go wrong. We might not be able to find it, identify it. We might not be able to review ancillary review and submit it properly. If there's a confusion on the title, we might not be able to find it. So I really stress that this title needs to match the proposal. Or the protocol title if there's not a proposal or a federal proposal within. So we'll just say test demo disclosure. And we are dealing with human subjects. Now, if there were any buttons with a star not checked, it wouldn't have let me continue. So yeah, the system is pretty smooth once you get going. So it's asking us for the IRB. If we select USF IRB, it will prompt us to select a USF study. So for the sake of this demo, we will choose Advara or a third party, an external IRB review, because I don't want to get stuck on having to select a USF study that might not be in here. And sure, we will say this is a multi-center trial. So it's asking us for the funding status. It is sponsored, and it's asking us for the sponsor here. Pretty much all of the main sponsors should be in here. Let's go with Bayer Pharmaceutical. So I just entered Bayer, right? And we have 3 buyers that come up. And of course, if it's not listed, I think I just saw 3,400 sponsors listed in this list. But of course, there's an off chance of maybe not having the sponsor in here. That's where we have this little handy box where we can type in the sponsor. So same here, the principal investigator of the local site. Sometimes the PI might not yet be in the system, so we can write them in. We will then ask them to create an ARC profile because we need to have them in the system if they are a PI on a disclosure. So it's not a requirement to fill this in. So I'm going to leave it blank. Only the ones with the red star are requirements. So we're going to leave this blank. And then here, this is very important, attach your protocol, proposal, research plan. Without the protocol, without the consent document, I guarantee you, we will reach out to you asking for this, especially if it's not linked to a study number. Because in order for us to type up and implement a management plan, we need to know the protocol, the study, the informed consent requirements, the documents. So please make sure to always give us the protocol and any other related documents to this study. Upload multiple study documents in here. And it's actually a requirement I see here. Let me see if it will let me. Yeah, see, it won't even let me continue, which is great. Upload something fun here. Oh, screen. We'll just upload the admin review criteria document, just so it lets us continue. Oh, it even requires me to enter a PI. Okay. I will be the PI. So in the beginning, I entered a multi-center trial. It's going to ask us about the participants, the human subjects that we plan to involve in this project, how many are enrolled across the USF investigational site. So I'm just going to make up these numbers. We got 3 study centers involved. We have 300 total anticipated human subjects planned to be enrolled across all study sites. But at USF, we're only anticipating enrolling 5 subjects. So it's going to ask us about the purpose and the role of the study. It's asking us to explain this in lay terms and in adequate detail. So, a lot of times the protocol or documents are very scientifically focused and written. So it's kind of asking us to just simply describe what your purpose of the study is. The purpose of this study is to demonstrate a demo in ARC of how to submit a disclosure. Please indicate your roles on the study. So as a PI, I oversee all aspects of the study. I will participate in the study design. I will conduct study initiating activities. And if any of these aren't listed, we have this other button, which we have a fill-in box down here, which is always nice. And then if we're dealing with human subjects here, we have some questions that are pertain to human subject studies and involvement. And once again, this is what applies to the role of the PI here. What does the PI do? So we educate, we screen, we enter data, we dispense medication, we review medical records. I checked other, let's say, monitor and perform audit on study. All right, this is something I didn't see here in a box, so we're going to just make this up. This is just, like I said, if there's something that doesn't apply, feel free to write it in here. So we're getting into the part of why we disclosed this ECUI. Why, what's our SFI? What is our interest? So we're dealing with a pharma company. A lot of times I see consulting or speaker bureau, similar speaker engagements, but we're going to do consulting. We're going to say that buyer pays us 5 to 10,000 a year for consulting. You can mark all these boxes if there's multiple CUIs that pertain to this. Like I mentioned earlier, we have the employment of a related person, so a lot of times this and something else will be checked. The company may also have ownership interest, advisory boards, so yeah, etc. But we're just going to do the consulting and affirming that I do not have any significant financial interest or relationships that may be impacted by this USF system research project. I wonder if I can leave this blank. Okay, I can. So in here, it's going to ask us for this consulting entity and disclosing it. So this is myself. The nature of the consulting is I consult with buyer, pharma, once a year and receive remuneration. Remuneration. Please indicate the approximate value of compensation you have received over the previous 12 months and the anticipated compensation over the next 12 months. We don't know yet, so we'll just say we cannot readily be determined. And the name of the entity, this is going to be our Bayer Pharmaceuticals again. Once again, if the sponsor is not listed, we have a box to fill this in. So what's the relationship to the researcher here? Right, they're the sponsor, they're the funding source. And then the entity type. Cannot submit the form due to one errors. Please review the page and correct. Okay, so entity type is a required field. Startup company. Yeah, it's a publicly traded company. Right, the sponsor, BioHealth Pharma. Okay, and boom, there it is. So if we made a mistake, we can update it. If we need to add another consulting, we can do this here. So at this point, we can list all of our anticipated or received compensation from various sponsors related to this project, to this research. So this is the first part of disclosing how to disclose, what to disclose. We're now getting into controls and the management plan itself. So as the PI is asking us a various amount of questions here, what I participate my role being in the study. So we'll just check off most of these. Being blinded, we'll do surgery, I will screen human subjects, participate in evaluation of research, conduct of experimental portions, participate in design of the project. And then it's going into the management controls that are inherent in the study design. Objective endpoints. We do have objective endpoints. The endpoints are objective as they go out to create a disclosure, an ARC. Disclosure. I misspelled that. Disclosure. So the following individuals will be blinded. I will be blinded. The statistician will be blinded. The study coordinator will be blinded. And yeah, we just have a lot of fill-in boxes at this point. We can check boxes, fill in names. The co-investigator is right, Mr. X will be blinded, Mr. A will be blinded. These are my co-investigators who will conduct the data analysis. The sponsor, most of the time, will do it. We once again have an other box. We can type in a different name here. These blanks. So mentioned earlier, we talked about students. Let's say we do have students. We have Miss R and Miss B on here, and this is the safe harbor person that was mentioned earlier. We need to select somebody. And as mentioned, the safe harbor person cannot have a related interest or be supervised by someone with a related interest. Typically, the safe harbor is not a member of the research team. We will have an independent monitor oversee certain aspects of this research project. Does the study team include individuals who do not have a SFI? We'll just say no. Study team, right? So individuals on the study team were not supervised by the interest investigator. So a lot of studies may have a lot of study team members that should be mentioned here, listed here. And the big part here is who do not have a SFI, right? If they did have a SFI related to this, then we would answer differently here. Will additional independent studies be conducted? No. And this is the informed consent and disclosure in entities. Yeah, where are we going to disclose this? Going to disclose to the research sponsor, funding granting agencies, FDA. And then this last box is really cool. Describe any additional elements of this USF research project that will help to reduce or eliminate potential bias resulting from your SFI's relationship. So and this box can be used for basically anything that wasn't covered, right? You can write in here any situations, any special situations, or anything else that is important that is not being asked. So this box comes in very handy. And then our last page, we just basically have to confirm and agree that we're disclosing. We're being honest. We're not lying. We're not underplaying any of the remunerations we received. And we need to select a supervisor here. Yeah, I think for the sake of this demo, it won't let me select a supervisor here. But there's like the other boxes a similar like the sponsor boxes where you can type in a supervisor's last name. It'll populate the list of anybody with that name and you can select them. And once again, if they're not listed, there's going to be other box where you can type in the name. Now, if they're not in ARC, if they don't have an ARC profile, we'll reach out to them and tell them we have a investigator who is saying that you're the supervisor of this project. Please create a profile so you can acknowledge and review this disclosure. And without the supervisor reviewing and approving this disclosure, the COI office does not formally get to review these. So it's a barrier, it's a barricade to ensure that the department supervisor sees these and approves and acknowledges them, which may also sometimes create a delay, right? We reach out to supervisors on a weekly basis and say, hey, you know, we have some of these disclosures stuck. Will you please log in and move them forward so we can formally review them? So yeah, this is our basic how to disclose a human subject research in ARC. I hope that it gave you all some clarification on the basis of disclosing and the system in itself. So at this point, I want to thank you all for joining and open the floor up to any questions.